Here is a revised version of the excerpt, maintaining the essence and clarity of the original. You're safe now, Valentina, she said, deliberately omitting her last name as she looked into the face of her savior, Gabriel Mendoza. At 35 years old, Gabriel never expected to find anyone on that rural road during the worst storm of the season. He had ventured out alone to ensure the safety of his small farm's cattle when he heard the desperate honking in the distance. "We need to get to my house before the water rises further," he explained, helping her navigate through the mud. "Is there anyone else in the car?" he asked. "No, I'm alone," Valentina replied, clinging to him as they made their way with difficulty. Gabriel's house was modest but sturdy, strategically built on a natural elevation of the land. Upon entering, Valentina observed the simplicity of the place. Basic yet well-kept furniture, polished cement floors, and a small collection of books that seemed out of place in a farmer's house. "I'll bring you some dry clothes," he said, briefly disappearing into a room to return with a simple skirt and blouses. "These belong to my sister. They're not designer, but they're clean and dry." Valentina noticed a strange tone when he mentioned designer, as if there was some resentment in his voice. "Thank you. Anything is better than this," she replied, looking at her ruined dress. As Gabriel prepared coffee in the small kitchen, Valentina quickly changed behind a blanket that he had hung as an improvised dressing room. The clothes were simple, but comfortable. "The last signal was registered near Veracruz, but it's a vast area," said Javier, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Find her. The wedding is in 2 months and the merger with Cosméticos Rivera depends on this marriage." He paused significantly. "Offer a reward of 50,000 pesos to anyone who provides information about her whereabouts." Later, in his private office, Javier contemplated the photograph of Valentina on his desk. She was beautiful, no doubt, but what really interested him was what she represented: the key to the Ruiz Empire. Years of careful planning would not be ruined by a sentimental outburst. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "I need you to expand the search in Veracruz," he ordered without a greeting. "I want reports from every hospital, hotel, and police station in that area. Valentina Ruiz has to appear." Meanwhile, at the small farm, Valentina's days began to take on a surprisingly comfortable routine. Every morning she learned something new. How to milk the only goat Gabriel owned, how to repair the fence damaged by the flood, how to make fresh cheese. Her hands, once soft and perfectly manicured, developed blisters that eventually turned into calluses. Her skin, bronzed by the sun, no longer needed makeup. The hat he used to wear. One afternoon, as they were returning from checking the crops, they came across an old woman walking with the support of a cane. "Gabriel, I see you have company," said the woman, observing them with curiosity. After preparing a simple meal together, Valentina tried again. "Why did you stop being an architect?" "The award I saw was prestigious." Gabriel chopped the vegetables with more force than necessary. "I thought we had agreed not to ask about the past." "I'm sorry. It's just that," Valentina began, but Gabriel interrupted her bitterly. "Haven't you heard of the Herrera disaster? The tragedy that cost 12 lives because the great architect Miguel Herrera did not properly supervise the materials. Don't you remember the headlines?" Valentina fell silent. Of course she remembered. It had been a national scandal, an innovative social housing project that collapsed just 3 months after its inauguration. Among the victims were the architect's wife and daughter, who had gone to visit a family living there. "Yes, I remember," she admitted softly. "I'm sorry." Silence settled between them, heavy as the humidity saturating the air after the storm. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, chaos reigned in the central offices of Cosméticos Ruiz. Javier Delgado, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, pounded the table in the boardroom. "It's been 3 days. How is it possible that no one knows where? Are you there?" The private investigators he had hired exchanged nervous glances. "Mr. Delgado, we have traced the security cameras to the south exit of the city. After that, he took secondary roads where there is no surveillance. His phone has been off since the night of the party," added another. Revised text. Everything was going perfectly until Valentina decided to look for Javier for the official toast. "He must be in the study, miss," one of the waiters indicated to her as he saw her scanning through the crowd. With the sound of her heels echoing on the Italian marble, Valentina headed to her father's study. The door was slightly ajar, and what she saw inside destroyed the life she had planned in seconds. Javier, her fiancé, was passionately kissing Carla Mendez, his partner and supposed friend. "Marriage is just a formality, darling," Valentina heard Javier say as he caressed Carla's face. "Once I have access to the Ruiz fortune, we can expand the business our way. Valentina is too sentimental for business." Without making a sound, Valentina stepped back, tears clouding her vision. Without a second thought, she grabbed the keys to her truck and fled from the mansion in the torrential rain that had started to fall over the city. She drove aimlessly, opting for rural roads to avoid being found, as the storm worsened. Now, hours later, she found herself trapped in a flood. A sudden explosion in a remote location in Veracruz, with a stranger trying to save her. Gabriel's strong hand pulled her out of the vehicle just as the water reached dashboard level. Valentina clumsily fell into his arms, trembling not only from the cold, but from fear. "My name is Gabriel," he said, as he carried her through the current to higher ground. "When the building collapsed, we discovered that he had replaced quality materials with cheaper ones, pocketing the difference. 12 people died, including my wife Rosa and our 6-year-old daughter Lucia." Valentina felt a lump forming in her throat. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I was legally acquitted, but people don't forget," Gabriel continued. "I lost everything. My reputation, my family, my will to live." So Miguel Herrera disappeared and Gabriel Mendoza was born in this forgotten corner. The silence that followed was heavy with emotions. Without thinking, Valentina took his hand. To her surprise, he didn't pull away. "I was also betrayed by someone I trusted," she confessed, although her experience was less tragic. For a moment, their gazes met under the moonlight, and something undefinable happened between them. A connection, a mutual recognition of two wounded souls. Gabriel looked away first, gently retracting his hand. "We should rest. There's a lot of work tomorrow." As she headed to her room, Valentina. She realized that, for the first time in her life, she wasn't counting the days to go back to her old life. In fact, the idea of returning to Mexico City, to endless meetings and superficial parties, left her with a strange sense of emptiness. In front of the small cracked mirror in the bathroom, she barely recognized the woman looking back at her. No makeup, hair simply tied back, skin kissed by the sun. She looked younger, more authentic. "Who are you really?" she wondered. Valentina felt her cheeks flush. "We always had staff to take care of that," she said, as Gabriel looked at her with renewed interest. "Who are you really, Valentina?" "The women I know don't talk about staff as if it were the most normal thing in the world," he commented. "Just someone who wants to forget her previous life for a few days," she replied, avoiding his penetrating gaze. "Didn't you say last night that Miguel Herrera was dead? Let's just say I'm leaving someone behind too." The silence that followed was tense, but brief. Finally, Gabriel nodded. "Fair deal. I won't ask, you won't ask." After breakfast, Gabriel showed Valentina how to wash dishes with rainwater. Her delicate hands, accustomed only to computer keyboards and champagne glasses, soon reddened and cracked. "You have princess hands," Gabriel commented with a half-smile as he watched her awkwardly dry a glass. "But they will toughen up. With time." "I'm not a princess," she protested, although she was aware that her privileged life had kept her away from these everyday realities. The morning progressed with Gabriel teaching her basic tasks. Sweeping the dirt floor of the courtyard, feeding the chickens, and picking vegetables from the small backyard garden. To their surprise, although Valentina was incredibly clumsy at first, she learned quickly and did not complain. "I never thought carrots came directly from the ground like this," she commented with childish amazement as she pulled one from the soil. A humble peasant rescued her from the water without imagining that she was a millionaire who would fall in love with him. "Please, help me. The water keeps rising," Valentina shouted from inside the luxurious SUV. Her face was a mix of terror and desperation as the water was already up to her waist. The muscular man, machete in hand, looked at her intently. Rain ran down his soaked shirt, clinging to his well-built body. "Hold onto my hand now," he ordered with a firm yet reassuring voice, reaching out his arm to her. "The door is stuck. I have to break the glass." "No, wait, let me try to open it one more time," she pleaded, panic evident in her voice as she struggled with the handle. Gabriel struck the window with the machete handle, shattering the glass precisely to avoid hurting her. "Come with me if you want to live. The water keeps rising and this car is going to sink. We'll sink in minutes." The rain was falling heavily as Valentina Ruiz struggled to get out of the vehicle. 3 hours earlier, she would have never imagined being in this situation. Her life in Mexico City revolved around executive meetings, social events, and planning her wedding with Javier Delgado, the man she thought she knew until that same afternoon. The engagement party at the Ruiz family mansion had been the social event of the year. Valentina, heiress to the Ruiz cosmetics empire, looked radiant in her designer dress as she greeted the guests. With sharp and penetrating eyes, Doña Esperanza observed Valentina, who was stranded until the roads were fixed. The elderly woman studied Valentina from head to toe, as if she could see through her peasant disguise. "Your hands have been working hard lately," she commented, taking Valentina's hands in hers, wrinkled with age. "But they were not born for this work, were they?" Valentina withdrew her hands, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. "I am learning. We are all always learning, my dear," Doña Esperanza responded with an enigmatic smile, "especially those who come from far away, like you." After saying goodbye and continuing on her way to the village, Valentina noticed that Gabriel seemed pensive. "Who is she?" she asked. "My neighbor. She arrived in the village a few years ago, shortly after I did," Gabriel replied vaguely. "She is wise, although sometimes too nosy." That was not. Hey, sitting on the porch under a starry sky incomparable to that of polluted Mexico City, Gabriel finally opened up a little. "I had a successful office in the capital," he said suddenly, looking at the horizon. "I designed houses for the wealthy mainly, but my passion was social projects. When I won the contract for the Nuevo Amanecer housing project, I thought it was my opportunity to change lives." Valentina listened in silence, afraid to interrupt that rare moment of openness. "My partner supervised the material purchases. I trusted him," Gabriel continued, his voice becoming harder. The lid of the box slid off, revealing a shiny object that contrasted with the simplicity of everything else in the room. Valentina bent down to pick it up and was paralyzed to recognize it, a prestigious architecture award. The name engraved on it took her breath away, Miguel Herrera, for innovation in sustainable design. "Miguel Herrera," she murmured, looking at Gabriel with confusion. Gabriel's expression changed drastically. A mix of pain and anger crossed his face. He snatched the award from her hands and returned it roughly to the box. "That man is dead," he said tensely. "He died 5 years ago along with everything he loved." Valentina stepped back, surprised by the intensity of his reaction. Suddenly, she remembered the headlines that had dominated the media years ago. Miguel Herrera, the brilliant architect whose innovative project D. The collapse of the affordable housing had killed 12 people, including her own family. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," she began. "Rest," Gabriel interrupted, his voice softer but distant. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As she walked away, Valentina realized she had found refuge with a man who, like her, was running from his past, but unlike her, his reasons seemed infinitely more tragic. That night, lying in the simple bed as the rain continued to fall outside, Valentina made an impulsive decision that would change her life forever. For the first time, she would be just Valentina, not the Ruiz heiress, not the businesswoman, not the socialite. Just a woman. Enhanced text. Asterisk. "They're full of dirt," Valentina commented, observing the roots with awe. Gabriel looked at her as if she had said the most absurd thing in the world. "Where did you think they came from? The supermarket?" "Well, yes. I mean, I know they grow in the dirt, but I've never seen one freshly pulled out," Valentina admitted, feeling embarrassed by her ignorance. By midday, Valentina was exhausted, but strangely satisfied. There was something gratifying in the physical work that she had never experienced in her corporate life. As Gabriel surveyed the property to assess the flood damage, Valentina sat on the small porch, contemplating the landscape. The lowlands remained underwater, but from that elevation, she could see glimpses of hope in the distance. He hates seeing miles around. It was a wild and authentic beauty that the views from his penthouse had never had. "The main road is completely flooded," Gabriel reported upon his return. "Your car is almost submerged, I'm sorry." Valentina shrugged. The luxurious SUV that 2 days ago she considered indispensable now seemed surprisingly irrelevant. It was just a car. Just a car. Gabriel let out a brief laugh. It was a brand new Mercedes GL. It costs more than this house and all my land put together. Valentina was surprised by the precision with which he identified the vehicle. How do you know so much about expensive cars? You don't seem like the type. A flash of discomfort crossed Gabriel's face. I had another life. I told you. Miguel Herrera knew about expensive cars. His tone became distant. But he no longer exists. That afternoon, while lost in a storm, Valentina found herself in the most unexpected place. Dawn came with a grayish light filtering through the small window. She woke up disoriented, taking a few seconds to remember where she was. The simple bed, the unpainted concrete walls, and the sound of water dripping outside were so different from her penthouse in Polanco. She sat up slowly, noticing that someone had left clean clothes folded on a chair. A cotton skirt and a white blouse, both obviously used but impeccably clean. As she left the room, she found Gabriel in the kitchen, preparing. He was preparing what seemed to be a simple breakfast. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "I hope you were able to rest." "Better than expected," Valentina replied, settling into a wooden chair. "Thank you for the clothes." Gabriel served 2 plates of scrambled eggs, beans, and freshly made tortillas. The aroma made Valentina's stomach growl. "The roads will remain flooded for at least 3 more days," Gabriel commented as they ate. "You can stay here, but you'll have to help with the chores." "I don't keep idle guests." Valentina nodded, disguising her surprise. No one in her life had ever spoken to her so frankly, without the deference that her last name usually commanded. "Of course, although I must warn you that I have never," she made a vague gesture with her hands, "done household or farm chores." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "Never? Not even wash a dish?" "Her bed." Gabriel picked it up quickly, but not before Valentina caught a glimpse of a metallic glint inside. She pretended not to have noticed anything, respecting her host's space. "What were you doing driving on these roads during such a storm?" Gabriel asked as she appeared already changed. No local would go out in this weather. Valentina thought about making up a story, but Gabriel's direct and honest gaze convinced her to opt for a simplified version of the truth. "I was escaping," she admitted, "from a life that turned out to be a lie." Gabriel nodded, without asking for more explanation. Translations. She made implications, as if she perfectly understood what it meant to flee from the past. "You can stay until the water recedes. The roads will be blocked for several days according to the forecast, but I don't want to inconvenience you. There's probably a hotel nearby," she added, a bit unsure. Gabriel let out a brief laugh. "The nearest hotel is 40 kilometers away and it's probably flooded too. Don't worry, I have a spare room." As the night progressed and the storm raged outside, they shared a simple dinner of beans, homemade tortillas, and fresh cheese. Valentina, accustomed to luxury restaurants, was surprised to find herself enjoying the meal with a pleasure she hadn't felt in a long time. "You cook very well for a," she began, but stopped herself before finishing the sentence. "For a simple peasant," he completed with a slight smile. "I haven't always been a peasant." Valentina's curiosity grew, but she didn't press further. She knew she also had secrets to keep. Later, as Gabriel showed her the small room where she would sleep, Valentina accidentally stumbled upon a box partially hidden under the bed. Gabriel quickly picked it up, but not before Valentina caught a glimpse of a metallic glint inside. She pretended not to have noticed anything, respecting her host's privacy. Every day that passed without revealing her true identity deepened the deception. That night, sitting on the porch under a starry sky, Gabriel seemed unusually thoughtful. "Are you ready to? Do you regret staying here for so long?" he suddenly asked. "The roads have been clear for weeks." Valentina looked at the stars, searching for the right words. "No, these have been the most real days of my life." "Real?" he questioned. "In my previous life, everything was superficial. Meetings with people who smiled falsely, relationships based on interests, appearances to maintain," she sighed. "Here, only what you truly know how to do, what you truly are, matters." Gabriel smiled slightly. "And what have you discovered you truly are?" "A terrible egg collector," Valentina joked, "but a decent goat milker." They both laughed, and at that moment their gazes met. The tension that had been building between them for weeks slowly intensified, as if giving them time to retreat. Gabriel leaned towards her. The first kiss was tentative, almost shy, a gentle touch of lips under the silver light of the moon. When they pulled away, Valentina felt a flutter in her stomach unlike any previous kiss had provoked. "I never thought I'd feel this again," Gabriel murmured, caressing her cheek with rough fingers from work. "I've never felt this before," she replied honestly. The following days passed in a dreamlike state. They worked together as before, but now the touches were. Sure, here is an edited version of the excerpt, maintaining its essence and clarity. Doña Esperanza's house was nestled in the hills, overlooking the vast expanse of the valley. The scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, mingling with the aroma of homemade bread baking in the oven. The sound of birds chirping in the distance added to the tranquil atmosphere. The house was similar to Gabriel's, but it was adorned with colorful traditional textiles and plants in clay pots. The aroma of freshly made tamales filled the air. As they ate, the old woman observed the interaction between Gabriel and Valentina with keen eyes. "They look good together," she commented bluntly. "I haven't seen Gabriel smile like that since he arrived in the village." Valentina felt her cheeks warm, and Gabriel coughed uncomfortably. "Doña Esperanza, always so direct," murmured Gabriel. "At my age, there's no time for beating around the bush," replied the old woman, pouring more coffee. "When life gives you a second chance, you have to take it without fear." After eating, while Gabriel helped Doña Esperanza move some heavy furniture, the old woman approached Valentina, who was washing the dishes. "Be careful, girl," she said in a low voice. "Your hands may no longer be those of a princess, but your eyes give you away. I don't know who you really are, but Gabriel has suffered too much to bear another disappointment." Valentina stopped washing, surprised by the woman's frankness. "I would never intentionally hurt him," she replied. "Intentions don't always matter. It's the secrets that hurt," Doña Esperanza replied, taking Valentina's wet hands in hers. "I saw how you look at him and how he looks at you. But relationships built on lies are like houses on sand." The old woman's words weighed heavily on Valentina throughout the rest of the journey. Return. She knew she had an important decision to make. Valentina remembered Gabriel's question, and now the answer didn't seem as clear as it had been all her life. It had been a month since the rescue and the flood. Although the roads had cleared weeks ago, Valentina was still there, making excuses not to leave. First, she said she needed to save up for the fair, then that she wanted to help with the harvest. Gabriel didn't question her reasons, secretly relieved that she decided to stay. That morning, Valentina was milking the goat with a skill that would have been unthinkable weeks before. Her movements were confident, her hands already hardened by daily work. "You're getting better," Gabriel commented, leaning against the doorframe of the small stable. "You no longer scare poor Manches." Valentina smiled, remembering her disastrous first attempts when the goat had run off, spilling the bucket of fresh milk. "I have a good teacher," she replied, finishing her task and standing up. Something had changed between them. Their gazes lingered a second longer than necessary. Their hands accidentally brushed when passing tools or plates. A new tension, pleasant but undeniable, hung in the air. After breakfast, Gabriel announced his plans for the day. "I'm going to check the cornfield on the east side. Do you want to come or would you rather stay with the chickens?" "I'll come with you," Valentina replied without hesitation. "The chickens hate me, ever since I tried to grab his balls the first time." Gabriel burst into laughter, a sound that filled the room with warmth. Caption. The official story was that you needed some alone time to reflect before the wedding. No peasants or forgotten villages. Valentina barely paid attention, looking at her hands, now rough and tanned, so different from the perfectly manicured ones she used to have. Finally, she looked up and declared, "There will be no press conference. And there will be no wedding." Javier dismissed the stylists with an impatient gesture. When they were alone, his facade of lovesick concern faded away. "Don't be ridiculous, Valentina. We've already postponed the wedding once. The merger with Cosméticos Rivera depends on this marriage." "The merger can go to hell," she replied, with a calmness that surprised him. "I saw you with Carla at the engagement party. I heard everything." Javier paled momentarily, but quickly recovered. "It was just a stupid mistake. Carla means nothing to me. You said I was too sentimental for business and that marriage was just a formality to access the Ruiz fortune. Valentina stood up, facing him. So yes, you're right. I am too sentimental. I won't marry without love. Javier's expression hardened. Think it over, Valentina. Do you think your father would approve of you rejecting the merger for a countryside romance? Abandoning everything he built for a nobody? The mention of her father touched a sensitive nerve. Ricardo Ruiz had dedicated his life to building the cosmetics empire, hoping that Valentina would continue his legacy. My father wanted. Here is the revised excerpt. Lately, it had become more common to hear those words. They don't hate you, they just think you're an incompetent thief. As they walked among the rows of corn, Valentina took a deep breath. The clean air, the sun on her skin, the earth under her bare feet. Simple sensations she had never valued in her old life. Sometimes I wonder what my father would say if he saw me like this, she commented, more to herself than to Gabriel. Your father is very strict, pointed out Gabriel. Valentina hesitated. Talking about her family would reveal too much about her true identity. He was a businessman. He built his company from scratch, she vaguely replied. He passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry, said Gabriel. Me too. Valentina stopped, gazing at the horizon. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps and I did. But sometimes I feel like I lost a part of myself along the way. Gabriel nodded in understanding. My father was a bricklayer. He wanted me to study to have a better life. When I became an architect, he was proud. He paused, his gaze lost. After the collapse, he refused to speak to me. He died without forgiving me. Valentina, impulsively, took his hand. It wasn't your fault. It was my project, my responsibility, he replied. Gabriel said with a hardened voice. I should have checked everything myself. I trusted too much. You were deceived, insisted Valentina. Just like me. Gabriel stared at her, trying to decipher a riddle. What did they do to you, Valentina? What were you really running away from that night? Before she could answer, a scream interrupted them. In the distance, Doña Esperanza waved at them from the road. Gabriel. Alternatively, Javier and Valentina looked at each other, confusion turning into suspicion. Valentina reached out her hand towards Gabriel. Javier Delgado, fiancé of Valentina Ruiz, heiress of Cosméticos Ruiz, introduced himself with a calculating smile. I can't thank you enough for taking care of my future wife. Gabriel's face hardened as he understood the magnitude of the deception. His eyes, which had looked at Valentina warmly just a few hours before, were now as cold as ice. Ruiz, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. From the Cosméticos Ruiz empire. Valentina took a step towards him. Gabriel, can I explain? Explain what? He interrupted, his voice filled with bitterness. That you lied to me all this time? That you mocked the naive peasant? No, it was never like that, Valentina replied, trying to take his hand, but he rejected her. Miss Ruiz has been under a lot of stress, Javier intervened, addressing both Gabriel and the discreetly filming cameraman. She had a nervous breakdown before our wedding. We are very grateful for your hospitality. Mr. Mendoza, added Gabriel dryly. The cameraman moved closer, capturing the dramatic reunion. Sensing the tension, Javier wrapped an arm possessively around Valentina's waist. It's time to go back home, darling. Your father must be very worried. Gabriel took a step back, his face a mask of pain and betrayal. Was any of what we lived real? He asked quietly, addressing Valentina alone. Or was it just a game for you, an experiment too? The following excerpt has been edited for clarity while maintaining the essence of the original. Seeing how the other half lives. Everything I felt was real, whispered Valentina as tears streamed down her cheeks. Gabriel, please. But he had already turned around, entered the house, and slammed the door shut. Javier took the opportunity to guide Valentina towards the truck. Murmuring for the cameras, we're bringing her back to civilization. The wedding will proceed as planned. As the truck drove away, Valentina looked out the rear window. The solitary figure of Gabriel stood on the porch, watching their departure with an inscrutable expression. Beside him, almost like a protective shadow, was Doña Esperanza, whose sad gaze followed the truck until it disappeared into the distance. Valentina felt she was not only leaving Gabriel behind but also a part of herself she had discovered in that simple place, an authentic part she feared she might never find again. To find in the artificial world she was returning to. The return to Mexico City felt like entering a strange and unfamiliar world. The bright skyscrapers, the incessant traffic, the constant noise. Everything seemed excessive to Valentina after the simplicity of rural life. The presidential suite at the Emperador Hotel, where Javier had insisted on staying for added privacy, was bigger than Gabriel's entire house. The contrast was so overwhelming that Valentina felt dizzy. "Tomorrow we will have a press conference to announce your return," Javier explained, as a team of stylists waited to restore her public image. Here is a revised version of the excerpt. The gazes were intentional, open, and warm. At night, they shared fragments of their past, or at least selected parts. Gabriel spoke of Rosa, his late wife, a primary school teacher with a contagious laugh and a love for plants. He also mentioned little Lucia, who at 6 already showed a remarkable talent for drawing. On the day of the collapse, Rosa had taken Lucia to visit a family in the building, former students of hers who had secured one of the apartments. Gabriel's voice broke. "If I had done my job properly." Valentina hugged him tightly, offering silent comfort. As their relationship deepened, Valentina's guilt over her deception grew. Every time Gabriel spoke, due to her distrust towards businessmen and the wealthy who prioritized profits over lives, she felt a pang of remorse. One afternoon, while Gabriel was repairing the roof of a shed, Valentina heard unfamiliar voices. 2 men on motorcycles stopped in front of the house. "Good afternoon, miss," greeted one of them, showing a photograph. "We are looking for this woman. Her name is Valentina Ruiz. There is a reward for information on her whereabouts." Valentina's heart stopped as she recognized her own image in the photograph. It was from the engagement party, with her designer dress and perfect smile. "I haven't seen her," she replied with a trembling voice, grateful that her current appearance differed so much from that image. "May you be happy," Valentina replied, though without the conviction she desired. "Your father wanted you to be strong," Javier retorted. "The industry is changing. Without this merger, Cosméticos Ruiz will lose relevance in 5 years." Valentina approached the window, observing the city sprawling beneath her. Doubt settled in her mind. Was she betraying her father's legacy for a romantic dream? "I need time," she finally said. "Time is what we don't have," Javier replied, softening his tone as he approached. "The board expects an answer on the merger this week. If we marry, we will control 62% of the Latin American market." Valentina closed her eyes, remembering the pal. Gabriel's words about how businessmen prioritized numbers over people. Was that what she was doing? "Give me 3 days," she asked. "Then I'll give you my final answer." The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and carefully orchestrated public appearances. Valentina smiled mechanically for the cameras, answered rehearsed questions, and was whisked from one commitment to another like a porcelain doll. At night, alone in her penthouse, she gazed at the stars from her terrace, missing the open sky of the estate, the sound of crickets, and Gabriel's quiet presence. On the 3rd day, during a dinner at an exclusive restaurant, Javier ordered champagne to celebrate. "So, what's your answer?" he asked, raising his glass. "Are we rescheduling the wedding?" Valentina observed her reflection in the bubbly drink, contemplating her decision. "Revise." Valentina sipped the bubbly liquid as she reflected on how what she once considered sophisticated now seemed superfluous. Suddenly, she asked, "How did you know Gabriel was an architect? When you arrived at the estate, you called him a peasant, but you never mentioned his past as an architect." Valentina's eyes narrowed. "I never told you." Javier hesitated for a moment, enough for Valentina to confirm her suspicions. "You should have mentioned it at some point," she responded with too much nonchalance. "Or maybe I found out. It's natural that I would want to know who you were with." However, something in his response, and his slight hesitation, set off an alarm in Valentina. That night, instead of returning to her penthouse, she headed to the main offices of Cosméticos Ruiz. The building was nearly empty at that hour, except for the security personnel and some executives working late. Valentina used her access card to enter the corporate archive, where old documents that had not yet been digitized were kept. Mercedes, her father's former secretary who refused to retire, found her there surrounded by folders. "Miss Valentina, what are you doing here so late?" I'm looking for information on a construction project from 5 years ago. Nuevo Amanecer housing. The elderly woman frowned. The project by the architect that collapsed? It was a terrible scandal. Did Cosméticos Ruiz have anything to do with it? Mercedes seemed uncomfortable. Your father was very ill at that time. Mr. Delgado was handling many subsidiary operations. Enhanced text. Valentina felt her heart racing. What did Javier have to do with that project? That year, Cosméticos Ruiz had diversified into the lucrative market of construction materials. Mercedes lowered her voice. Mr. Delgado was the liaison with the contractors. He approved the budgets. With trembling hands, Valentina continued to review documents until she found what she was looking for: contracts, invoices, and purchase orders signed by Javier. He had authorized, through the substitution of high-quality materials for cheaper ones in various projects, including Nuevo Amanecer. My father never knew, did he? Valentina asked, feeling nauseous. Mercedes nodded sadly. Don Ricardo was already very ill. He trusted Mr. Delgado blindly. Valentina tucked the evidence into her purse, her mind working at full speed. Not only had she discovered that Javier had deceived her, but he was also indirectly responsible for the tragedy that destroyed Gabriel's life. Meanwhile, in the village, Gabriel tried to resume his routine as if the month Valentina spent there had never happened. But everything reminded him of her: the garden they planted together, the improvements in the chicken coop, even the stray dog she adopted and now followed him everywhere. Doña Esperanza visited him daily, bringing him food and forcing him to talk. You're withering away like a plant without water, boy, she scolded one afternoon. How long are you going to punish yourself? She lied to me. Javier eyed him suspiciously, while Valentina rose slowly, her heart beating strongly. Valentina, what's going on? Gabriel insisted, trying to understand the situation. Valentina took a deep breath, gathering the courage needed to face the truth she had been hiding. Gabriel, I have to tell you something, she said, her voice barely a whisper. A month ago, I decided to leave my previous life behind. I couldn't continue living under or the expectations of being the heiress of the Ruiz Cosmetics. I needed to find myself. Javier stepped forward, interrupting with his authoritative tone. You can't hide forever, Valentina. Your family needs you, the company needs you. Gabriel stood between them, protecting Valentina with his firm stance. This is her decision, Javier. You can't force her back into a world she doesn't want. Valentina, with determination in her eyes, stepped forward. I won't return, Javier. My place is here, with Gabriel. It's time for my family to understand that. The tension in the air was palpable, but Valentina felt a sense of relief at last, having faced her past. Gabriel, taking her hand, offered her the support she needed. Together we will figure it out, he promised, and Valentina knew she had made the right decision. The rain finally subsided, and Valentina stepped out into the schoolyard to catch her breath. She was exhausted, dirty, and soaked, but strangely satisfied. This tangible work, with immediate results, reminded her why she had loved her time on the farm. You look like when I found you the first time, said a familiar voice behind her. Valentina turned to see Gabriel, as soaked and tired as she was, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Except this time it was me who willingly came to the flood, she replied, accepting the cup he offered. An uncomfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken words and conflicting feelings. Why did you come back? Gabriel finally asked. I heard about the flood. I wanted to help, Valentina replied. You could have sent money or a relief team. You didn't have to come yourself. Valentina took a sip of coffee, buying time to gather her thoughts. I also came for you, she finally admitted. I found out that Javier was here and I know his methods. Gabriel's expression darkened. Your fiancé? Ex-fiancé, Valentina corrected. I called off the wedding and the business merger. Something flickered in Gabriel's eyes. A mix of hope and doubt that quickly faded. We should go back inside, he said, avoiding the subject. The temperature is dropping. As they walked back to the shelter, Valentina decided it was time for the truth. I found out something about the collapse of Nuevo Amanecer, she said abruptly, causing Gabriel to stop in his tracks. About who really authorized the attention, Gabriel. The merger was cancelled this morning during a surprise press conference, the reporter confirmed, excited by the reaction it generated. She announced that Cosméticos Ruiz will not merge with Rivera Internacional and that the wedding has been called off. It's the business scandal of the year. Gabriel felt a mix of confusion and hope. Valentina had cancelled everything for him. Before he could process this information, a luxurious black SUV pulled up next to the television crew. Javier Delgado stepped out of it with a smirk on his face. Furious session. Mendoza greeted him coldly. "We need to talk in private," Javier said. The reporter and her team captured the tense encounter, but Gabriel ignored them, focusing on the man in front of him. "We have nothing to talk about," he replied, turning to leave. "It's about what happened to your family," Javier said, causing Gabriel to stop in his tracks. "I know who you really are, Miguel Herrera." Gabriel turned slowly. "What do you know about my family?" Javier smiled smugly, taking advantage of the fact that the cameraman had moved far enough away not to hear them. "I know that your partner didn't act alone in replacing the materials. Someone else authorized those changes. Someone with connections at Cosméticos Ruiz." Gabriel's blood ran cold. For years he had been searching for answers, trying to understand how his partner had managed to deceive everyone. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying you should stay away from Valentina," Javier interrupted. "It would be a shame if the press found out that." As the rain finally began to let up, Valentina paused for a moment to observe the shelter at the school. Her heart still beat strongly, but now for a different reason. Gabriel's figure could still be distinguished amidst the chaos, tirelessly working. It had been an exhausting day, but seeing the community united filled her with renewed hope. As she walked among the volunteers, they whispered as she passed, still amazed by her presence. "Ia." Valentina Ruiz, the millionaire who had returned to her roots to help in a crucial moment. As she approached Gabriel again, she noticed that his gaze was less harsh, though still filled with reservations. "Thank you for what you've done today," he said, keeping an eye on their surroundings. Valentina nodded, aware that words were unnecessary. She had returned to make a difference, and this was just the beginning. Both went back to their tasks, knowing that, although there was much left to do, they had taken an important step towards recovery. Title: Justice in Chaos. Int. Prosecutor's Office, DAY. Valentina, tense but determined, sits across from the prosecutor, who examines the documents with a serious expression. Prosecutor: the substitution of quality materials for inferior ones. This could reopen the case of the collapse. Are you aware of the implications, Miss Ruiz? Your company could face million-dollar lawsuits. Valentina: I am. And I am prepared to establish a compensation fund for the affected families, but first, I want justice to be served. Ext. Prosecutor's Office, DAY. As Valentina exits the building, her phone rings. It's an urgent call from Mercedes. Mercedes. VO. Miss Valentina, Mr. Delgado was seen heading towards the town where you were. He had a press team with him. Valentina's heart beat strongly. Knowing Javier, she knows he will try to manipulate or threaten Gabriel. Valentina: prepare the helicoptera. I'm heading there right now. Ext. Skies over the region, DAY. The journey back to the town feels endless, even by helicopter. From the air, Valentina watches in horror as the river overflows following the recent rains. Much of the town is once again underwater. Ext. Town, DAY. Upon landing on elevated ground, Valentina is met with scenes of chaos. Residents evacuating, animals being moved to higher ground, makeshift rescue teams working frantically. In the midst of it all, organizing the efforts, is Gabriel. The chaos of the flood is absolute. Valentina steps off the helicopter, determined to face whatever comes. After working side by side organizing the evacuation to the second-floor classrooms, Gabriel's architectural experience proved invaluable in assessing the structure and designing emergency reinforcements. Exhausted but satisfied to see everyone safe, they sat on the exterior stairs leading to the second floor, now the only visible part of the entrance. You handled the crisis well, Gabriel commented, glancing at her. The Valentina I met at the estate would have screamed at the sight of her wet shoes. Valentina smiled faintly. That Valentina was real, you know? She was just learning. And this Valentina, the heiress who turns down million-dollar mergers and faces corporate scandals, is also real. As real as you, Gabriel. Or should I say Miguel? Gabriel. He looked towards the horizon, where the sun was beginning to peek through scattered clouds. Miguel died with Rosa and Lucia, he said softly. But perhaps, just perhaps, parts of him live on in Gabriel. At that moment, Doña Esperanza approached them, walking with difficulty on the wet steps. You two should rest, she scolded affectionately. You've been working all night. We're fine, Doña Esperanza, Gabriel replied, helping her to sit next to them. How's your house? Underwater, like half the town, the old woman sighed. But the walls are strong. It will survive, like me. Valentina noticed something peculiar in their interaction, a familiarity that went beyond mere neighbors. Gabriel me. Valentina was romantically involved with the architect responsible for a tragedy that claimed the lives of 12 people. I was acquitted, growled Gabriel. Legally, perhaps, Javier responded, but the court of public opinion is less forgiving. Javier approached, his gaze steady and determined. Valentina has dedicated her life to honoring her father's legacy. Do you really think she would risk her reputation for an affair with you? Javier's words hit Gabriel like punches. Doubt began to creep into his mind. What if Javier was right? What if Valentina regretted her decision when their relationship affected her public image? If you truly care, Javier continued, you will let her move on with her life. She belongs. A otro mundo, Mendoza, one in which you would only be a fleeting distraction, an exotic whim. Gabriel remained silent, battling his deepest insecurities. Javier's words resonated in his most intimate fears. Think about it, Javier concluded, returning to his vehicle. Sometimes, if you truly love someone, the best thing is to let them go. As the caravan of vehicles drove away, Gabriel stood motionless, torn between the longing of his heart and the fear of ruining Valentina's life. What Gabriel ignored was that, at that very moment, Valentina was at the Attorney General's office presenting evidence against Javier for corporate fraud and criminal negligence in the collapse of the Nuevo Amanecer housing. The documents showed that Javier Delgado had personally authorized the faulty construction. Gabriel continued his work repairing the fence, responding curtly. And didn't you lie to her? The old woman insisted. Didn't you hide who you really were? It's different, Gabriel replied. Why? Because you're poor and she's rich? Doña Esperanza shook her head. Pride is bad company to sleep with, Gabriel. Before leaving, the old woman left several old newspapers on the table. That night, reluctantly, Gabriel reviewed them. They were articles about Valentina Ruiz before her disappearance. Inaugurating a foundation for women in need, implementing sustainability policies in her company, rejecting offers from multinational companies wanting to move production out of Mexico. It wasn't the image of the ruthless businesswoman he had imagined. The next day, Gabriel found himself in the same place where he had rescued Valentina, looking at the now dry road, when he heard the sound of several vehicles approaching. His heart skipped a beat, thinking for a moment that it might be her, but as they got closer, he saw it was a television crew. A reporter approached with a microphone in hand. Mr. Gabriel Mendoza, we are from National News. We would like to interview you about Valentina Ruiz, the heiress who was living with you. Gabriel stepped back, uncomfortable. I have nothing to say. Is it true that you had a romance? What do you think of her impending marriage to businessman Javier Delgado? The reporter insisted. There are rumors that she called off the business merger because of you. This caught Gabriel's attention. Gabriel, filled with emotion, finally took Valentina's hand and intertwined it with his. It won't be easy, he murmured. We both carry complicated pasts. The best futures are built on imperfect pasts, Valentina replied as she squeezed his hand. Doña Esperanza, smiling, nodded in approval. Now go rest a bit, you stubborn pair. The town will need you strong in the coming days. During the following week, as the waters receded slowly, Valentina and Gabriel worked together. In the initial reconstruction phase, she used her business contacts to obtain materials and funds, while he contributed his architectural knowledge to design structures more resistant to future floods. The news of Javier Delgado's arrest for corporate fraud and criminal negligence shook the town. Newspapers speculated on the connection between the business scandal and Valentina's relationship with the mysterious peasant. One afternoon, as they reviewed blueprints at the school still functioning as a community center, Gabriel broached the subject they had been avoiding. What will happen when the emergency is over? He asked without looking up from the drawings. You have a company to run in the city. I have a farm to rebuild here. Valentina put down the pencil and looked directly at him. What do you want to happen? Gabriel finally raised his gaze. I want you to be happy, Valentina, but I can't ask. Valentina looked directly into Gabriel's eyes, her voice firm and determined. Javier was the link between your partner and the material suppliers. I found documents with his signature approving the substitution of materials. Gabriel, stunned, could barely process what he was hearing. Do you have evidence? He asked, incredulous. I presented them to the Attorney General this morning. They will reopen the case, Valentina affirmed, taking a step towards him. My father was very ill, and Javier took advantage to make decisions without his knowledge, maximizing profits. Cost of security. Gabriel ran a trembling hand over his wet face. Why would you do this, implicating your own company? Because it's the right thing to do, Valentina replied simply. And because I love you, Gabriel. I couldn't bear to know that the man who proposed to me was responsible for the tragedy that destroyed you. The confession hung between them, fragile like an exposed heart. Gabriel wrestled with conflicting emotions. Your company will face million-dollar lawsuits, he finally said. I know. I've already set up a compensation fund for the affected families, Valentina assured, holding his gaze. Money won't bring back lives, but it's a start. Before Gabriel could respond, they were interrupted by urgent shouts. One of the makeshift dams had given way, and the water threatened to reach the shelter. Everyone to the upper floors, ordered Gabriel, his voice regaining authority. Valentina, help the children. During the following hours, the chaos. Laden with unspoken emotions. Doña Esperanza let out a trembling sigh, while Valentina felt the weight of the revelations in her chest. So, you've been here all this time, watching from the shadows, said Gabriel, his voice a whisper of disbelief. Yes, son. I never wanted to interfere, just to be close, replied Doña Esperanza, gently squeezing Gabriel's hand. Valentina, still processing the story she had just heard, asked company. With caution, and now? What happens now that everything has come to light? Doña Esperanza smiled tenderly, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and hope. Now is the time to heal and move forward, she said, looking at Gabriel affectionately. It's time for all of us to find a new beginning. Gabriel nodded slowly, his expression softening as understanding enveloped him. It will be difficult, but I am willing to try, he admitted, his voice firm. Valentina, feeling a new connection with the two, added, You are not alone, Gabriel. I am here to support you, to support us. The silence that followed was no longer filled with secrets, but with promises of a brighter future, a future where forgiveness and love could flourish. In those years, Rosa and Lucia rested in peace, knowing that Miguel, now known as Gabriel, had found a new purpose and love. Life, like the river that had once brought destruction, finally found a peaceful course, promising renewal and growth. 3 months after the second flood, the town began to show signs of recovery. Where once stood flimsy houses, now stood more solid structures, ready to withstand future river floods. The community center, completely renovated, now housed a clinic, a library, and a training space. Valentina had moved to a small house near Gabriel's farm, dividing her time between the town and the city of. In Mexico, where she continued overseeing the transformation of Cosméticos Ruiz. Her luxurious penthouse now seemed cold and empty compared to the warmth of her new life. That morning, Valentina was getting ready for a crucial video conference with the board of directors. On the rustic table she used as an improvised desk, there were scattered documents. Her state-of-the-art laptop contrasted with the simple surroundings. Good morning, gentlemen, she greeted formally as the faces of the executives appeared on the screen. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, responded the board president, a 60-year-old man who had worked with her father. We understand you have a proposal to present to us. That's correct, said Valentina as she activated her presentation. Presentation. Asterisk. As you know, following the cancellation of the merger with Cosméticos Rivera and the scandals related to Mr. Delgado, our company needs a new direction. Over the next hour, Valentina presented her vision. To transform Cosméticos Ruiz into a company committed to sustainability, using natural ingredients produced by rural communities and allocating 15% of profits to the Nuevo Amanecer Foundation, dedicated to projects for decent housing and recovery of areas affected by natural disasters. She acknowledged that these changes require an initial investment, but the 5-year projections show sustained growth and significant improvement in our eye. Corporate image. The faces on the screen showed various reactions, from skepticism to cautious interest. "This is a risky proposal," Ms. Ruiz commented, an executive. "Are you sure our shareholders will be willing to wait for long-term results?" "Consumers are changing," Valentina replied confidently. "They are looking for companies with a purpose, not just products. My father built this empire by understanding the needs of his time. Now we must do the same." After a series of technical questions, it was time for the vote. Valentina held her breath as the executives deliberated in a private virtual room. Gabriel entered quietly, placing a cup of coffee next to her and squeezing her shoulder in a show of support. "How is it going?" he whispered. "They are voting," Valentina replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. As they supervised the construction of the new cultural center, a helicopter flew over the town and landed in a nearby clearing. Moments later, a group of men in suits and briefcases approached. Miss Ruiz greeted the man who seemed to be the leader. "I am Eduardo Rivera from Cosméticos Rivera Internacional." Valentina immediately tensed. Rivera had been the main advocate of the merger she had cancelled. "Mr. Rivera, what a surprise," she replied professionally. "What brings you here?" "Curiosity, mainly," the entrepreneur smiled, looking around. "I wanted to see for myself." "Actually, what was so important that you rejected $1 million merger?" His tone was casual, but there was an edge to his words that did not go unnoticed by Gabriel, who took a step forward protectively. "And now that you see it, are you satisfied?" Valentina asked calmly. Rivera observed the ongoing constructions, the volunteers working, the evident transformation of the town. "I must admit it is unexpected," he conceded. "When Javier told me about his rural project, I imagined something more symbolic, a public relations gesture, not a real transformation. I have never been interested in empty gestures, Mr. Rivera," Valentina replied, holding her gaze steady. "If you'll excuse me, we have work to do." "Of course," Rivera said, handing a card to Valentina. "But before I go, I would like to make you an alternative proposal. Our companies could collaborate on social initiatives like this, without the need for a merger." Rediscovered in her. "Your father would be proud," he said softly. Valentina's eyes briefly welled up. "I hope so. He believed in building, not just growing." 2 days later, Valentina traveled to Mexico City for the annual shareholders meeting. It was her first major public appearance since the scandal, and the media was eager to capture her. In the elegant auditorium of the corporate headquarters, Valentina took the stage dressed in a formal yet understated suit, very different from the flashy outfits she used to wear at similar events. "Distinguished shareholders," she began. "Cosméticos Ruiz is at a turning point. Recent events compel us to reflect on the kind of company we want to be." With clarity and passion, Valentina presented her vision for the future. A company committed to sustainability, social responsibility, and ethical innovation. She explained how the pilot project in the flooded village was already yielding positive results and presented by a man in a suit who completely clashed with the environment. "Good morning, lovebirds," greeted the elderly woman. "This gentleman says he's come from the city to speak with you, Valentina." The man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Carlos Mendoza, from the Attorney General's office. We need your final statement for the case against Javier Delgado." The mention of Javier momentarily darkened the mood. The case had progressed rapidly thanks to the evidence provided by Valentina, but the formal trial had barely begun. "Of course," Valentina replied. "Please, come in." As they made their way inside, Gabriel exchanged a significant look with Doña Esperanza. Both knew how difficult it would be for Valentina to relive the whole ordeal. The meeting with the prosecutor lasted 2 hours, and when it finally ended, Valentina seemed emotionally drained. "Are you okay?" Gabriel asked when they were alone. "It will be a long process," she sighed. "The prosecutor says Javier is negotiating with the prosecution, offering to expose other involved parties in exchange for a reduced sentence. Are you worried about what he might say about you?" "No," she replied firmly. "I have nothing to hide. I'm concerned about the families who lost loved ones in the collapse. They have been waiting for justice for years." Gabriel silently embraced her, understanding. He himself had avoided thinking too much about the trial, about having to publicly confront the trauma he had tried to leave behind. "We will face this together," he promised. "In the end, the truth will come to light." For a long time, he saw how his dreams and hopes for the town were starting to materialize. Gabriel, with a serious look, confronted Valentina. "Do you want me to give up my life for you?" Valentina smiled softly, taking his hands on the table. "What if I told you that in these weeks I have found more purpose and happiness than in years of board meetings?" Gabriel looked at her with curiosity. "What do you suggest?" "We could find a middle ground," Valentina proposed with eyes full of enthusiasm. "I've been thinking about redirecting part of the company towards natural and sustainable products. We could establish a foundation to rebuild the town, merging modern designs with local traditions. And you could start designing again, but this time having total control over the materials and processes." Gabriel listened to her with growing interest, a spark lighting up his eyes. "Are you proposing a fusion of our worlds?" "Exactly," Valentina replied, smiling warmly. "We don't have to choose between your world and mine. We can create a new one together." For the first time since they reunited, Gabriel smiled openly, and Valentina saw in his eyes the man she had met at the estate. Strong, upright, capable of dreaming again. "I think I'd like to give it a try," he finally said. That night, under a starry sky now clear after the storms, they sealed their commitment with a kiss that promised a new beginning. They knew it wouldn't be an easy road, but they were willing to travel it together. In the distance, from their small temporary house set up at the school, Doña Esperanza watched them with a peaceful smile. Finally, after so long, she saw her dreams for the town starting to come true. The tension in her voice was evident. When the executives returned to the call, the board president cleared his throat and said, "Miss Ruiz, the board has decided to approve your proposal, with some minor modifications that we will send to you in writing. We believe that, although risky, your vision honors your father's innovative legacy." Valentina exhaled slowly, barely believing what she was hearing. "Thank you for your trust. I will not disappoint you." As the call ended, she turned to Gabriel with a radiant smile. "We did it. The first phase is approved." Gabriel hugged her tightly, lifting her off the ground in a celebratory spin. "I never doubted you," he said proudly. "You are the most persuasive woman I know. I learned from the best negotiator," she joked. "No one haggles the price of chickens like you." Laughing, they stepped out onto the porch to enjoy the sunrise. In the distance, they could see the reconstruction work progressing. Several young architects, recruited by Gabriel, were working with local residents to implement flood-resistant designs. "Did you ever imagine we would end up like this?" Valentina asked, leaning on his shoulder. With dirt under his nails and a happy smile, Gabriel replied, "Never. But I also never imagined a city princess would learn to milk goats." "Ex-princess, please," she corrected with feigned indignation. "Now I'm a rural entrepreneur with a global vision." Their moment of tranquility was interrupted by the arrival of Doña Esperanza, who was approaching accompanied. "Recent data shows that consumers prefer brands with clear purposes. My father's greatest legacy was not simply creating a profitable company, but one that improved lives," she concluded. "Today I ask you to accompany me in this new chapter, where success will be measured not only by profits, but by the positive impact we generate." At the end, there was a moment of silence before the applause erupted. They were not enthusiastic ovations, but a cautious recognition of the proposed change in direction. During the question round, a minority shareholder stood up. "Miss Ruiz, there are rumors circulating about your relationship with Gabriel Mendoza, formerly known as the architect Miguel Herrera. Do you not consider that this relationship represents a conflict of interest, given the historical connection between him and the scandals that affected our subsidiaries?" The room fell silent. It was the question everyone wanted to ask, but no one had dared to formulate. Valentina maintained her composure, although her heart was beating rapidly. "My personal relationship with Mr. Mendoza is precisely that. Personal," she replied firmly. "There is no conflict of interest. On the contrary, his experience as a globally recognized architect has been invaluable for our reconstruction projects. As for the scandals mentioned, I remind you that Mr. Herrera was legally exonerated, and current research points to other individuals responsible within our own structure. And hope. It was the design of a house for us." Valentina studied the plans in awe. The design was magnificent. A modern structure perfectly integrated with the natural surroundings, with rainwater harvesting systems, solar panels, and spaces for both everyday living and work. It combines the best of both worlds, like us, Gabriel continued. It's spacious enough to host city guests, but it's connected to the land. It has offices for you to run your business from here and a studio for my designs. It's perfect, Valentina murmured, deeply moved. Gabriel took a deep breath before continuing. The house is just a part of what I want to offer you, he said, kneeling in front of her. Valentina Ruiz, would you do me the honor of sharing your life with me? Not just this house, but all the dreams, projects, and challenges that come our way. Tears of happiness welled up in Valentina's eyes as she nodded. Yes, Gabriel, 1,000 times yes. The kiss that followed sealed a promise. To build together a future that honored their pasts but was not limited by them. In the distance, discreetly watching from a tree, Doña Esperanza smiled with tears in her eyes. Finally, after so much pain, she could feel that her family had found peace. Rosa and Lucia would be proud. The waters that once divided them had now united them in a shared journey. They had brought lives that now had given way to new beginnings. Like a river that eventually finds its natural course, Valentina and Gabriel had found their way. The scared woman Gabriel had rescued from the waters had transformed into a visionary leader, merging the best of both worlds. I have a proposal for you, he suddenly said. Before we dive into all the work, let's take a day just for ourselves. No meetings, no construction, no calls. Just you and me. Valentina smiled, realizing that amidst all the work, they had hardly had time to nurture their relationship. Sounds perfect. What do you have in mind? She asked. It's a surprise, Gabriel replied mysteriously. I just need you to be ready tomorrow at dawn. The next morning, Gabriel took her to a special place. The riverbank that had brought them together twice. But now, instead of the chaos of the floods, there was a small table set up for a romantic breakfast, surrounded by wildflowers. It's beautiful, Valentina sighed, touched by the gesture. This place changed my life twice, Gabriel confessed as he poured coffee into simple yet elegant cups. The first time when I lost everything, the second time when I found you. As they ate breakfast, they talked without the usual pressures, rediscovering each other. Gabriel spoke of his youthful architectural dreams, and Valentina shared anecdotes of her privileged yet lonely childhood. After a moment of peace and connection, they both knew that this new beginning was just the start of a beautiful journey together. At breakfast, Gabriel took her hand and led her to a nearby small hill. There he unfolded a carefully rolled map. What is this? Asked Valentina, curious. Our future, if you wish, Gabriel replied nervously. Enza opened the chest and took out a delicate pearl necklace. This necklace belonged to Rosa, my daughter, she explained with a trembling voice. She wore it on the day she married Miguel. I would like you to wear it today. Valentina felt tears threatening to ruin her simple makeup. Doña Esperanza, I can't accept it. It's too personal. That's precisely why I want you to wear it, insisted the old woman, placing the necklace around Valentina's neck. Rosa would have wanted Gabriel to find happiness again. And you, my dear, have brought light back to his eyes. The two women embraced, united by the love they both felt for Gabriel, albeit in different ways. Thank you for accepting me into your family, whispered Valentina. You built your own place in it, replied Doña Esperanza wisely, with your actions, not with your words. Meanwhile, in the backyard of the house, guests were starting to arrive for the ceremony. It wasn't a lavish wedding as it would have been in Valentina's former life, but an intimate celebration with about 50 people. Townspeople who had become friends. Some executives from Cosméticos Ruiz who had supported Valen's vision. Tina and a few close friends from the city. Gabriel, dressed in light pants and a white manta shirt, nervously waited under an arch of flowers and intertwined branches that he had built himself. By his side, as an impromptu best man, was Carlos, a young architect who had helped bring the event to life. The deepest wounds can heal. The stars began to shine in the sky as the newlyweds bid farewell to their guests, ready to start their new life together. They didn't need a honeymoon in exotic places. They had found their paradise in that corner of Mexico they had transformed together. Their story, which began with a desperate rescue during a flood, was now becoming a local legend. That of a man who, unknowingly, saved a millionaire from turbulent waters and, In the process, not only won her heart but also forever changed the lives of an entire community. Because sometimes, the most beautiful stories start with a storm. A gleam of admiration in his eyes. "That's the Valentina I always knew you could be," he said proudly. In the conference room, a murmur filled the air as Valentina continued, firmly, "Our collaboration is not only an opportunity to rectify past mistakes, but also to build a better future, both literally and figuratively. If any shareholder finds this unacceptable, I respect their right to sell their shares." Your bold response left many astonished. The old Valentina would have opted for conciliatory apologies or would have downplayed the relationship. But this new Valentina was determined to defend her decisions, even before the powerful shareholders. As the meeting concluded, the results were mixed. Some shareholders expressed concerns, while others showed enthusiastic support. But most importantly, the majority decided to give Valentina the opportunity to prove that her vision could be both ethical and profitable. Back in the town, Valentina found Gabriel and Doña Esperanza waiting for her anxiously. "We watched the broadcast online," said Gabriel, embracing her. "You were magnificent." "You were right," added Doña Esperanza with a smile. "This girl has guts." Valentina slumped exhausted into a chair. "It was intense, but I think we gained the necessary support to move forward." "And now what?" asked Gabriel. "Now," Valentina replied with renewed energy, "we implement the full plan. Phase 1, finalize the town's reconstruction. Phase 2, establish the foundation officially. And Phase 3, launch the new line of locally produced natural products." Gabriel looked at her with admiration in his eyes. "That's the Valentina I always knew you could be," he said proudly. He worked on the reconstruction projects and had become her right-hand man. "Breathe, man," Carlos joked, noticing Gabriel's tension. "It looks like you're going to a trial, not to your wedding," Carlos remarked. "It's just that I still can't believe it," confessed Gabriel. "After everything that happened, finding this happiness seems deserved," added Carlos. And it is. Both had worked hard to rebuild not only the town but also their own lives. The conversation was interrupted by the first chords of traditional music. All the guests stood up, directing their gaze towards the house. Valentina appeared on the arm of Santiago, the mayor of the town, who had agreed to give her away in the absence of her father. Gabriel held his breath as he watched her approach. It wasn't just her beauty that moved him, but everything she represented. The woman who came into his life as a frightened stranger and was now his partner, his companion, his confidant. When Valentina reached his side, Gabriel noticed the pearl necklace and looked questioningly at Doña Esperanza, who nodded with a serene smile. The gesture deeply moved him. He understood its significance. The final blessing, the closing of a cycle, the permission to be completely happy again. The ceremony was simple but emotional. Instead of traditional vows, each had written a letter to the other. Gabriel was the first to read. "Valentina, when I rescued you from those waters, I didn't know that it was actually you who was coming to rescue me." Valentina gently wiped away her tears. "And he was right. I have found my path, and it's with you." As the party continued, the couple sneaked away to a nearby plot of land where the foundations of their most ambitious project were being laid. The Sustainable Architecture and Rural Development School Gabriel Mendoza. "The students will arrive in 6 months, Gabriel commented, observing the progress of the construction. "Young people from rural and urban communities will learn together how to build a better future. And in the meantime, the Earth Essence line is already in the country's main stores," Valentina added proudly. "Natural products, made by local hands, creating dignified jobs." They held hands, contemplating what they had achieved in just 1 year. The New Dawn Foundation had already built homes in 3 communities affected by disasters, implementing Gabriel's designs. Ruiz Cosmetics had transformed its image and practices, becoming a leader in sustainability. And most importantly, they had created a development model that respected both local traditions and innovation. "Do you know what's the most beautiful thing?" Gabriel reflected. "The greatest blessing emerged from the tragedy of my life. It's like the river," Valentina responded. "Destructive when it overflows, but a source of life when it flows in harmony." A cheerful shout interrupted their moment of reflection. They did not falter in the face of storms or losses, moving forward. They walked together towards a horizon full of hope. It had been a year since the second flood that brought Valentina and Gabriel together. The town, once vulnerable and forgotten, now shone transformed. Resilient and colorful houses lined paved streets, and a modern community center housed a school, a clinic, and training workshops. The most impressive feature was the new Ruiz Cosmetics factory, where local residents, both women and men, processed natural ingredients from the region for the successful Essence of the Earth line. The house that Gabriel had designed for them stood majestic on a small hill, overlooking the river, now tamed by intelligently designed containment systems. It was a harmonious blend of modernity and tradition, with large windows allowing natural light to flood every space. On that special morning, Valentina gazed at her reflection in the mirror. She wore a simple white cotton dress, very different from the ostentatious wedding gown she had chosen for her cancelled wedding with Javier. Her hair, adorned with wildflowers, fell freely over her shoulders. "You look beautiful," said Doña Esperanza as she entered the room with a small carved wooden chest. "Like a true country bride." Valentina smiled, nervous but happy. "Do you think Gabriel will like it?" "He will love it," the old woman assured. "I have never seen that boy so nervous and simultaneously dreaming." "A rather touching way," commented Gabriel, enveloping Valentina in a tender embrace. Regional music intertwined with modern classics, creating an atmosphere where traditional dances coexisted with contemporary rhythms. It was a perfect reflection of Valentina and Gabriel's new life, a harmonious fusion of two worlds. During the banquet, Mercedes, Ricardo Ruiz's former secretary, approached the couple with an envelope in hand. "Miss Valentina, I found this among your father's belongings," she explained. "It seems he wrote it in his final days, but never got around to delivering it." Intrigued, Valentina opened the envelope. It was a letter with her father's shaky handwriting. It read, "My dear Valentina, by the time you read this, I will probably no longer be by your side. There are so many things I wish I could have told you, so many pieces of advice I wish to give you, but time is running out. I just want you to know that I built this empire for you, but I never wanted it to be a cage. I created it to give you options, not to limit them. My greatest fear is that you will feel obligated to live the life I designed, instead of the one you choose. My greatest wish is for you to find your own path, to take the best of what I have left you and transform it into something that truly represents you. And, above all, to find someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you have or represent. I trust your judgment. You have always been wiser than you think. Con. Eternal love. Dad." Tears ran freely down Valentina's cheeks as she handed the letter to Gabriel, who read it with equal emotion. "It seems like your father approves of our union in a rather touching way," commented Gabriel, enveloping Valentina in a tender embrace. Doña Esperanza was looking for them for the traditional bride and groom dance. "Come, lovebirds," called the old woman. "It's time to celebrate." Back at the party, as they danced their first waltz as a married couple, Gabriel whispered in Valentina's ear. "From a peasant to your husband, who would have imagined it?" Valentina laughed, full of happiness. "From a lost millionaire to your wife. Life has curious ways of bringing the right people together." Around them, the townspeople, city executives, young architects, and local workers shared food, drink, and laughter, showing that seemingly opposite worlds could not only coexist but also enrich each other. As the sun began to set, bathing the celebration in a golden light, Doña Esperanza, sitting under a tree with a glass of punch in hand, smiled contentedly. Beside her, on a small table, she had placed a photograph of Rosa and Lucia. "Do you see my Rosa?" she whispered to the image. "Your Miguel has found his way back, and you, my little Lucia, will have many children learning at the school named after your dad." In the distance, Valentina and Gabriel shared another drink, surrounded by the love of their community and the promise of a future built with their own hands. A future where the turbulent waters of the past had transformed into clear streams of hope, where a humble peasant and a millionaire had discovered that true love transcends all social barriers. "I was drowning in my own pain, in my guilt, in my loneliness. You taught me that it is possible to start over, that the mistakes of the past do not define our future. I promise to build with you not only houses and projects, but a life of honesty, respect, and love. From floods to eternity, my heart is yours." Valentina, with a trembling voice full of emotion, read her letter. "Gabriel, I came into your life fleeing from mine, not knowing who I really was. In your simplicity, I found my truth. In your strength, I discovered mine. You taught me the value of honest work, of authenticity, of building with hands and heart. I promise to stand by your side in every project, every dream, every challenge. Two worlds that met in a storm and decided to create a new one together. I love you for who you are, for who I was when I was with you, and for who we will be together. There wasn't a dry eye among the attendees as they exchanged rings. They were simple silver bands that Gabriel had specially designed, with engravings representing the flow of water, a symbol of what had united them. By the power vested in me by this town and the darlings of all those present, declared the local judge officiating the ceremony, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss that sealed their union was met with applause, cheers, and, in the case of Mrs. Esperanza, silent tears of joy and nostalgia. The celebration that followed was a vibrant mix of local traditions and touches of elegance. Homemade food served on fine china and